Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Amplify Your Business. Today, I'm joined by Rebecca Kirstein Resch. She is the founder and CEO of a very interesting company called Inqli. Welcome to the show, Rebecca.
Thanks for having me.
So, Rebecca, right off the top, before we get into what it is that you are doing with your business, tell me a little bit about your thoughts on what are 3 things every entrepreneur needs to know, because I know you are a lifetime entrepreneur. So I love it when I can dig in deep into these questions with people who've been doing this for a long time.
Yeah, I've been doing this for a long time, probably longer than anyone should. So I definitely have a lot to share on this topic. It was actually a mentor of mine who kind of coined the phrase "you are the work," and said that to me at one point, and it really, really stuck with me. It has always stuck with me that constantly learning, self-reflection, looking at ways to improve yourself, ultimately always improves your own leadership and the company. And it's a lot of work, right? Everything from, personal work, like counseling and those kinds of things. But like reading and learning and practicing and trying new things in your company and trying new ways of doing business and new ways of working together. All those kinds of things really apply to you are the work. And that's really, really stuck with me. And I share it a lot with other entrepreneurs because I believe that's true. And the more of that work I do myself, the better I am at being a leader, the better I am at working with teams. And ultimately, the better I am.
I love that one. Yeah, that's a really cool one. Okay, so what would be another one?
That one. This one is, kind of been rolling around in my head for a while, but one of the things that I talk a lot about with young people, because it certainly was my experience when I was young, I really believed that at some point, the fear and the uncertainty and the constant work that we have to do as human beings would somehow just magically disappear at one point. I would look the right way, or I would have enough money, or I would have the right job, or whatever it would be. And it would just like, those people over there, they got it together. They got it figured out. And they don't feel that fear and uncertainty and constant work. That is BS. And you get to a certain age where you're like, oh crap, this never ends. This just keeps going and going and going. And I think there's a certain peacefulness in the awareness and understanding and just getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, because you will always be learning and growing and changing. And it's always going to be uncomfortable, and it's always going to be scary. There's always going to be a high degree of uncertainty. And I think the more you step into leadership, the more uncertainty there is, and therefore the more fear and discomfort. And just being comfortable with that in and of itself.
Yeah, I think that is such a great tip. And so I don't know, do you suffer from imposter syndrome from time to time as well? Because
oh my God, I don't even get me started on imposter syndrome, because I think I almost think we've like really mislabeled that, because I think that is the human experience of I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, who the heck am I? We all feel that way. And anybody who tells you they don't is a big
I 100% agree as well, right? And it is one of those things, until you've talked to other people about it, you don't realize it. You don't realize that other people are feeling the exact same way. And I think it's, like you said, it's the human condition, because there's so much that we don't know. I mean, no matter how much knowledge we have as individuals, it's just a fraction of what is out there, especially in the information age that we live within, right? And so it's so easy to feel like, oh, I just don't know enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel that way every day. And I think every human being does. And I think the biggest disservice we do, particularly young people, but to all of us, to ourselves, is to act like that isn't true, and to not talk about that openly on a regular basis. Like we have many, many younger team members in our organization. And that's the thing I talk about the most is like, hey guys, I don't know the answers. Like, help me out here, because none of us do. And I think the best thing you can do as a leader in any capacity is to acknowledge that, and to be vulnerable in that yourself, to set the example for others that it's okay to not have all the answers. In fact, asking better questions is the real sign of leadership.
Completely. And actually that just reminds me of, like we talk to about hiring people. We talk about how we should always be hiring people who are smarter than us, right? That should be the goal. And so we talk really openly about that. which automatically means that you're going to surround yourself with people who are potentially, smarter than you, or who have maybe more knowledge in particular
Yeah,
areas than what you have, even though you might be the one running the company. And so obviously in that
yeah.
scenario, if you do a good job of that particular task of hiring those types of people, well, then you're always going to definitely feel like you don't know everything and you're an imposter for sure.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. And that's
Yeah.
exactly it, right? Is the less the more you surround yourself with people that you believe are smarter than you. I mean, that's ultimately what makes you smart. That's the only thing that
Yeah.
makes me good at my job, is that I'm excellent at finding people way smarter than me to solve problems that I have no idea
Yeah.
how to
Yeah.
solve on my own. And that's ultimately what great
Yeah.
leadership is, in my opinion, is really
Yeah.
enabling the leadership of
Well said.
others.
Okay. So number three.
Number three, well, I think I kind of touched on this, and number three for me is really
Mm,
questions are the answer. That one comes up a lot for us around here. I mean, we've built an entire company based on questioning, so we're a little biased, but I really believe that. I believe that questions are the answer. It doesn't matter whether it's a disagreement with your spouse or your child, or a conversation at work, or a difficult conversation. Being open, being curious, asking great questions is always a better way to approach a challenge than being assertive, or having all the answers, or telling everyone what to do. And so I really strongly believe that the more we can cultivate curiosity and better questioning in all of our relationships at work or anywhere else, I think that just makes us better leaders, and ultimately
awesome.
builds better
Yeah, that's
companies.
really great. Okay. So tell me then, what is it that Inqli does? What problems are you solving over there with your company?
Yeah, well, Inqli is an inclusive knowledge sharing platform, and really, what we do is enable the connection of people who might not
Mm,
otherwise connect. And so, through the very act of asking questions, so a lot of people compare us to like Quora and Reddit and
yeah.
other tools like that. What's different about Inqli is that it's very much these like curated communities, whether it's inside an organization, or an entire innovation ecosystem across the province of Alberta, which we have our product running in right now, a pilot that is just expanding across the province. Whether it's that kind of scenario or the internal use case of our technology, it's all about asking questions in order to make connections to people who have very diverse perspectives on the questions you have, whether it's navigating an innovation ecosystem, or solving a problem at work, or ultimately a student looking to connect to somebody who has more experience and knowledge than they do in a field of interest or study. Those connections are really what we're all about, and AI based matching is ultimately the technology that's under the hood, but it's really about
Okay,
human
so
connection.
so walk me through this a little bit more. So I like, and I want to use Amplify Your Business and what we're trying to do with it as a bit of a, I guess, the use case. And so the impetus
Yeah.
behind this show that we've created here is trying to build a community of entrepreneurs who are there to kind of support entrepreneurs, right? And so I talk to entrepreneurs like you share with me some tips or some advice that you've picked up or gleaned along your journey as an entrepreneur, or maybe you've had some challenges along the way, and you talk a little bit about how you overcame those, and that maybe inspires or informs another entrepreneur to be able to avoid that. And it's about that sharing of the knowledge and allowing that community to kind of foster. And my longer term vision
Mhm.
is I'm hoping that at some point we can really have a more multi-way conversations, as opposed to just me doing an interview with you, that we can build a bit of a community where the other entrepreneurs, which are part of the ecosystem, can support each other in some form or another. Right now it's kind of happening organically through LinkedIn, because most people at the end of the show will give their LinkedIn credentials and say, hey, like, anybody out there who wants to connect, and we'll have conversations. And so it's happening, but just not with intention, I suppose you could say, and definitely not organized. So
Mhm.
how would
Yeah.
Inqli support something like that? The larger vision, I guess.
Great question. Yeah, absolutely. That's very much what Inqli is designed for. So, for example, if you had, a community of hundreds or thousands of people that were all entrepreneurs and interested in sharing ideas in that way, you would use Inqli's platform. We have mobile apps, we have web technology as well. You can integrate our technology into Slack and other tools that you use in your workplace. Or in the larger ecosystem kind of dynamic, essentially the way Inqli works is you have a question
Yeah.
and you don't know who to ask. You're a new entrepreneur. And you have a question about, everything from like the more emotional side of being an entrepreneur, the technical details of like, where do I get funding? And, all these different kinds of questions. You ask your question and it gets matched to individuals across the ecosystem with very diverse perspectives. So the same question could be matched to people in totally different industries. And so it's based on their skills, their interests, and their purpose, their own values. And that matching happens very quickly and instantaneously to multiple people. They can provide their perspective, but more importantly, everyone can see that. That's
Mm.
very public in the community. So the next time I go and ask another question that's even tangentially related through semantic search, that will just pop up for me of, oh, this question's already been asked and these replies have already been received on this particular question. This may help you. If it doesn't, you can go and ask your own question. What often happens is that the questions of others actually spurred a whole
Yeah.
different line of questioning for people. So the social learning context of sharing knowledge in that way is really what we're all about, is that it isn't just about asking a question. You often don't know who to ask, and being able to discover the knowledge of others in that way
I love
is
it
really
because
powerful.
the way it's different than say something for like Quora is that there's might be a subgroup of people who are following a particular topic or something who might then see my question and answer that. But what you guys are doing
Yeah.
with Inkley is that you're actually actively and intentionally matching then people to that question who might be able to respond to it directly then. And so it's not as much as it going
Exactly.
out to everybody. The answers are to everybody,
Yeah.
but the question is getting posed to very specific people. Then is that correct?
That is
Okay.
definitely correct, and it's continually being matched over time until such time as the asker is done with that particular line of inquiry and you can have multiple questions running at any given time. But the key is that you may ask a question in a forum on Reddit that's specifically for this topic, whereas with Inkley, you just ask the question and we do the work of matching it to people who you'd never otherwise connect with and may not even know exist, let alone know their expertise and their knowledge. And so it's about more than just garnering their knowledge, the tacit knowledge that's in their heads. It's also about like
Yeah.
making those connections of, wow, now I know Lance and I had no idea Lance was passionate about this thing that I am too.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, it's
cool.
it's very much matchmaking as well, right? So that's really interesting. Huh. So it's kind of like if you had Quora and Reddit and maybe Tinder all, but not the dating side of it,
Yeah.
but if they were to all have a baby, it's going to be Inkley in a way, right?
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah. If Quora, Reddit, LinkedIn, and Tinder had a
yeah, yeah,
baby,
yeah.
it'd be
Okay,
Inkley.
love it. A technology orgy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Going sideways, quick.
Okay, so that's fascinating and really interesting. Now you were telling me that you started this business on February 7th of
Yeah.
2020. So just so everybody remembers, this is like right before the lockdown, a month before the lockdown occurred, basically, and COVID
Yeah.
hit. And so, what kind of impact did that have on your business, good or bad? Either way.
Yeah, bit of both. Remember that comment I made about
Yeah,
fear, uncertainty, and
yeah.
constant work? It created a lot of that, and and it was really. I mean, we launched on February 7th. We promptly packed up our office, had to lay
Mhm.
off people, went home March 16th because the world changed dramatically, and that was not getting better quickly. And so in many ways, yeah, it was very difficult. It was very difficult to raise capital. I had planned to be on a plane all that year, meeting with investors and raising capital. And that's not what happened. And instead, we went down like a non-dilutive funding route. My husband kept his job and we kept, sort of plugging away. But what it also did is exposed, as everyone is aware of now, the massive cracks in all of our systems that
Yeah.
were already there. And so our technology was designed to address many of those cracks and many of those systemic issues when it comes to
Mm.
equity of access to connections and resources and knowledge. So in many ways, that did us a favor, because the thing we were kind of like running all over town telling people, no, listen, this is important. You got to realize that volunteerism needs to be virtual and knowledge sharing needs to be virtual. And the pandemic really made that easy for us, because everyone went, oh
Yeah.
crap, you're right. This really needs to be virtual. So in many ways, it did us a favor and it caused all kinds of challenges, which I think is probably true for many of us during the pandemic, particularly entrepreneurs. There was lots of golden eggs there, but there was also a lot of loss and grief, and
Yeah,
transformation
yeah,
that was
exactly. I
faced.
mean, it was quite an emotional roller coaster as a business owner. Like you said, when you're packing up the office and sending people home, not knowing whether or not
Yep.
the business is going to be able to survive, uh, whatever duration it was going to be. And then all of a sudden you're
Totally.
presented with all this market demand that is created for this virtual need that you guys were, ideally positioned or creating anyway, right? And so then it just kind of forced
Mhm.
everybody's hand in a way to really turn to those virtual solutions, and there you are. So yeah,
Here we are many years later. And I think it really made it difficult
yeah,
to raise
yeah,
funds. And in the beginning, we're building this technology that like nobody really quite understood what we were building until it
mm,
was built. And that's one of the biggest challenges, like, doing something new and innovative like this, is that people don't necessarily know what they need or what they want. They don't necessarily understand it. They understand the problem you're trying to solve, but sometimes you don't even understand the problem you're trying to solve really until you're digging in and learning and asking great questions. But it took us years to build this technology, and the world
yeah,
needed it years ago. So I wish I could have built it faster. But it's ultimately a totally different product than it would have been
yeah.
had we built it
So
5 years
tell me
ago.
a little bit about how you overcame that challenge of being able to explain what it is before it's built. Then, because
Yeah.
I'd imagine you needed to have somebody supporting it, whether that's on the investment side or debt equity side, or but also on the
Yeah.
early adopters, the beta alpha testers, and so on, right? So how did you overcome that challenge, that communication challenge of creating something kind of new that is outside of the box in terms of what other people understood?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm not sure that
Yeah,
I've overcome it yet, Lance, but I'm still working on it. And it's really, it's constant iteration, right? And so the way that we approach that is we ultimately went after non-dilutive funding, because that was obviously during the pandemic there was many more opportunities for non-dilutive funding because these systemic problems became so clear to people. So we were very fortunate to access some technology funding. Being a Canadian tech company, our program, I mean, Americans are just blown away at the level of government support we have
oh,
for
interesting.
innovative technology, IRAP and various granting programs and all of that. We really accessed a lot of that programming. We put in a lot of our own money to fund this particular project. We had early friends and
Yeah,
family investors. So right before that pandemic, we had raised a small amount of capital from friends and family, and we really worked hard to make that last to a point where we're constantly doing customer discovery and really learning about the problems in our ecosystem as we're building the technology. But it was years in the making, and it was really there was many times, and there still are many times where I'm like, where's that
yeah,
next thing going to come
yeah.
from? I got no idea here. How are we going to figure out the next step in the journey. And I think that getting comfortable with that, like I mentioned earlier, of, I don't have all the answers. I don't know what, sometimes when I'm stepping one foot in front of the other, where I'm going to step, what
Yeah.
I'm going to step into. And that's the reality of doing this kind of work. And it's very uncomfortable. And I, have a tremendous amount of family support. I'm doing this work with my husband, who is my co-founder and my partner. We have a tremendous amount of support now from investors and partners and those early partners. I had excellent mentors and advisors. I really tapped into my
Hmm.
community and my network because I had so many amazing people around me that, and again, this is part of why Inqli needs to exist in the world, is I was really fortunate to be surrounded by entrepreneurs and people who had done this before in some capacity. So I had people I could call and say, "Hey, what did you do? Where did you go?" And
Yeah.
many people don't have that, and so that's
Yeah,
really what
yeah,
Inqli is
love
for.
it. Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm curious in terms of where you're at now with the business. I know that you're just starting to onboard some clients today, essentially, right? Like
Yes.
very recently, right? And
Yeah.
so obviously there's lots of
Yeah.
development when you're talking about tech startups that have to happen, and that takes time and effort and resources and so on. So, what is the business model then for Inkley?
Mhm.
Going forward? Where are you getting your revenue?
Yeah, well, we're
Yeah,
not getting near enough
yeah.
of it yet, but we will be. And yeah, so our original business model of solving this social problem of lack of access to equitable opportunities for learning and work. Ultimately, all of our connections come from our social capital and our inherited networks. And that is incredibly inequitable. And that's the real social problem we're trying to solve. But we wanted to build a sustainable and scalable business model, and that was, a lot of research to figure out what's the business case for serving this very real social problem. And that's corporate volunteerism. And so we did a lot of work in early days, interviewing a lot of big enterprise companies and understanding their challenges around corporate volunteerism. And the reality today that started to evolve throughout the pandemic is that these corporate volunteerism programs are looking for opportunities to scale volunteerism across remote and geographically
Hmm.
dispersed workforces. And that's incredibly challenging when you have thousands and thousands of employees. These companies are looking for opportunities to volunteer that are skills based. Using the skills we have is much more engaging than other activities that don't use the skills that we have and the knowledge that we have. And they're ultimately looking for volunteerism opportunities that are also virtual and micro, that they can access from anywhere. So our technology is designed so that enterprise employees can participate in volunteerism on a virtual platform. We handle all of the reporting and outcomes and volunteerism hours and measurement and all of that for ESG reporting. And that's the core of our original business model. But as you and I briefly chatted about too, we had a bit of a plot twist during the pandemic, where, as many startups do, where it didn't create a pivot, but it created an entirely new use case for our product, using our
Yeah.
technology internally to share knowledge between employees in the same way that they would share knowledge with external stakeholders through volunteerism programs. And so our customers identified that use case that has only grown throughout the pandemic. And so we have a SaaS business model. And so customers pay for access per seat for their employees. And we can actually create both environments where you can use our technology internally, but you can also use it for skills-based volunteerism. And both of those things can exist simultaneously within the
So
same
is it a
platform.
subscription model based off of a user rate per user or something, or how does that work?
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. Yeah, it's a subscription model, a
Yeah.
monthly cost per user, and we're also developing a new pricing model because we have customers like Rainforest Alberta, that is running a pilot across the province of Alberta to support founders and newcomers and students with wayfinding in the
Hmm.
innovation ecosystem. And that's a different model. And we are looking at ways that we can democratize access to our technology for not for profits and organizations that are looking to solve real social problems. So we're working with them to develop a bit of a different pricing model that allows them to scale to the hundreds of thousands of people that will need
Oh,
access in
very
the province of
interesting.
Alberta.
So now, what do you think is going to be the keys to your success, say, in the next 3 years? So the roadmap that you have in front of you right now, what has to happen in order for you to get there in 3 years'
Yeah.
time?
Ooh, that's a good question. That's a really good question. I think, well, a couple of things have to happen. One, we really are kind of flipping the script on volunteerism. That volunteerism doesn't have to look only the traditional ways that it's looked. It's a bit of a
Yeah.
disruption in that sense. That typically volunteerism is, pro bono projects, and we're picking up garbage, we're giving blood, we're doing these things as a team, which are awesome, and nobody should stop doing those things. However, they aren't accessible to everyone, they aren't engaging to everyone, and less than 30% of people in organizations actually volunteer on behalf of their organization. And there are many reasons for that, but accessibility is a big one. If you are a remote worker, or you're in a remote location, or you have varied abilities that don't allow you to go pick up garbage and do those kinds of things that are more physical, and your skills and interests just don't align with those kinds of opportunities, or you aren't in senior leadership in an organization where you're getting the opportunity to go and do these really time intensive pro bono projects. All those things are great. We are really democratizing that so that all levels of the organization can participate, and everyone has access. And so it ultimately needs to be true that people are ready and willing to embrace a new form of volunteerism that does not negate the old form of volunteerism, but instead creates more value, more opportunity, and more engagement across
Yeah,
broader
yeah.
audiences of
And
people.
so, in terms of your team, and what you think is going to be the challenges to that you're going to have to overcome, can you speak to some of those challenges? Yeah, that
Oh yeah,
you're gonna face, and how you think that you are going to be able to
there's so
overcome
many.
those.
Absolutely. I think it's always every startup, particularly in tech, this real chicken and egg dynamic of you need money to get
Yeah,
customers, you need
yeah,
customers to get money. It's kind of the most simple way that I always kind of describe that. And so far, how we've overcome that is being super resourceful and scrappy and using everything we've got to sort of overcome that, but also aligning ourselves with the right investors and the right partners. I just was on a call with our lead investors in our pre-seed round today, talking about some of these challenges of we have a few more months. We have a lot of big customers in our pipeline, and a few more months to like land some of those customers before we raise our
yeah,
next round of capital. And if we didn't have the support of the partners and investors that we have now, who are going, yeah, okay, we can see what you're doing over here, we can see the traction, even though there may not be a contract in hand from this customer yet, we see what's going on, we believe you, we trust you, we're listening, we're talking to you on a regular basis, we see the progress you're making. And those partnerships are absolutely critical. We would never be where we are if we hadn't had the support of very values aligned investors and partners from the get go. And I see our path to success is to continue to build really strong relationships like that, be very transparent and open, ask for help when we need it, because this is not easy. And nobody sort of quote unquote crosses the chasm from where we were a year ago to, where we're headed without a lot of support, a lot of advice, a
yeah.
lot of mentorship. And I've gotten really
Yeah,
good at
yeah,
asking for
yeah,
help.
and that's key. I think it really truly is, and this is one of the things that I hear repeated over and over again by a lot of the guests that I've spoken to, and it's just it's one of those things where I think until you start to ask for help, you don't realize how much help is out there, how many people are willing to give it and give it freely. Like it is really quite amazing. It is a great ecosystem. I think the entrepreneurial community has created for us if we want to tap into it.
Absolutely. And I think that's the real, you said the magic words there,
Yeah,
if we want to tap into it. And it requires that, it's why we're doing this pilot in Alberta, is I think we need better tools. But at the end of the day, we need safer spaces to vulnerably admit that we need help and ask for that help. And we need to create those environments as much as we possibly can, where people like me can feel safe putting up their hand and saying, you know what, I don't have all the answers, or I screwed up, or I have no idea what to do here.
Yeah.
Could
Yeah.
somebody help me out? Because there is just no way that one single person, just because you call
Yeah.
yourself the
Yeah.
CEO of the organization, does
Yeah.
not mean you have all the answers. So it's pretty critical that you're asking for help when you need it. And that's
So
not always
I'd
easy.
like to take this a little bit more to the personal level, and I'm really curious because you are a lifelong entrepreneur. You've been, in lots of different ventures and whatnot, and a really exciting one currently here. But with that comes that lifestyle, work-life balance, all that stuff. And so I'm curious, in your mind, what makes the entrepreneurial lifestyle difficult for entrepreneurs?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I mean, I really do embrace the idea that you are the
Yeah.
work. And so it can feel like you are working all the time on the business and in the business. And then you're like, oh, and then I got to do all this work on myself. It's like it can be really draining and exhausting. So yeah, on the personal side, I think it's it's
Yeah.
not for the faint of heart. I don't recommend it for everyone. I have been an entrepreneur my entire adult life, and before I met my husband, I was raising a child by myself, and there was times where that was way more challenging than it is now, in terms of the financial aspects of it, of making those kinds of choices, not necessarily knowing where your
Yeah.
paychecks are always coming from, all those kinds of things. So yeah, it's a really difficult journey, but I think that it, again, for the kind of person that is really deeply invested in learning, I always say there's only successes in learning. There's no failure. So when I fall on my face, it's like such a tremendous opportunity to learn. And when you are in those positions, I think from a I don't know what the right word is, but certainly internally for me, that's the thing that helps me get through the really crappy times where you're laying people off in a pandemic, and doing those kinds of things that are just not
Yeah.
fun at all. Part of the job that's really really hard. And yeah, I remind myself in those moments, like, this is okay, this isn't a success, so it's clearly time for
Yeah,
learning.
well, and that's the truth, isn't it? There's a learning moment in everything, whether it's on the success side or on the struggle side, right? There's lots of learnings there. And
Yeah.
speaking of that, I mean, I'd love it if you could think about if you had that opportunity to send a letter back in time to your younger entrepreneurial self. What would you tell
Mhm.
yourself? What would be in that letter?
Oh man. That'd be a really long letter. It'd probably be a novel. I'd
Yeah,
write myself a novel. And it would start with "Don't grow up, it's a trap," and the rest of it
yeah,
would ensue from there. But at the end of the day, I think what would be in that novel is a little bit about what I talked about earlier, that I really believed when I was younger that these people that were older than me and had these cool, interesting careers and, seemed
yeah,
to have it all together. I really
yeah,
believed they had it together. And then you get to a certain point in your adult journey where you're like, oh God, all these people that I thought were so successful and had it all together, sure, they have a few things together, but they're just as scared and uncertain and, learning like the rest of us. Some people just manage to make it look really glossy and smooth, but it doesn't matter who you are, you don't get to escape it. And so I think that is the one thing that I say a lot to young people. I'm sure my kids are tired of hearing it. Um, but it's very much the thing that always sticks with me, that I know now, like, and I don't just know it intellectually. I am like deeply aware of the fact that that is true. And it is so much more comforting to walk through the world knowing that everybody else is feeling that way too, and being open and vulnerable about it and having these kinds of conversations and sharing that with other people. Not only it makes you feel better about the fact that it's not just you, but it creates connection, because everybody is like, yes, oh yes, me too, and then you can have a real conversation, and it really breaks down barriers
yeah,
because we're
yeah.
all
Very
human.
good. Well, thank you so much for sharing that and sharing, all the things that you're doing and the advice that you have bestowed upon our listeners here today. I really appreciate it. And I know that those who are listening are going to get a lot out of it. And if there was an opportunity for somebody to connect with you at some point to learn more about Inqli or to connect with you one-on-one, what would be the best way to do that?
Yeah, LinkedIn is great. Rebecca at inqli.com, INQLI. Anybody can send me an email. Always happy to connect with other entrepreneurs. That's the name of the game. We're all in this together. We're all the crazy ones. So we got
Excellent.
to
Well,
stick
thank you
together.
so much. And for those of you who are listening to this episode and really enjoyed it and want to listen to some other entrepreneurial stories, you can find our full archive over at amplifyyourbusiness.ca, as well as searching on your favorite podcasting platform, Amplify Your Business. Until next time, everybody have a prosperous day. And once again, thank you so much, Rebecca.